Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. Before we dive into this powerful episode, please remember to subscribe to our channels and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes to continue hustling. This episode is sponsored by the Transact Card, Align Life, Brain-Based Health Solutions, Chiro HD, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, German College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, the IFCO, and 100% Chiropractic. Let's hustle.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 544 of the Chiro Hustle podcast. I'm your producer, Luke Millette, and here's your host, James Chester.
So today we had the opportunity of interviewing Uli Iserloh. And if you want to hear about how he came from the pharmaceutical industry to teaching marketing to chiropractors, stay tuned. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Chiro Hustle podcast. Today is 544. I'm really excited for this episode. We've been trying to get Uli on with us for several months now. We finally clicked it. So today he is on Chiro Hustle. Welcome. Before we get Uli Iserloh on and talk about his story about systems and marketing and doing things to restore function to your practice, we're going to open up and let you guys know our big why. Why do we do what we do? A lot of people are really curious, and I've been asked a lot of times, like, why have you dedicated so much time and interest to this profession? Well, I think a lot of it goes back to my journalistic background, and I think that freedom of speech really mattered for me my whole life. And I said, well, if I can create something to keep integrity within chiropractic that promotes First Amendment freedom of speech, I nailed it. And then I started to go down a little bit further. And I was like, well, what else matters? Well, medical freedom. And I know we're going to talk about that choice today, and family health freedom. And I know that resonates with our audience too. And if it doesn't, it should. And they're not the same thing. And then I got a little bit more like deep in it. I'm like, well, philosophy, what matters? Well, in chiropractic, what matters most, I believe, is protecting the sacred trust and not steering and not going down a path that doesn't promote that method of protection of integrity within philosophy. And that got me down a little bit further. I'm like, well, what else is there? Well, subluxation is something that's sometimes misconstrued, and a lot of the universities are actually removing it from their lexicon. I'm like, well, I want this show to get onto the campuses of these universities to where they can never remove it. So I just keep pushing and pushing. I'm like, well, what else really matters? Well, innate intelligence really matters, and so does universal intelligence. And that's like the premise of the adjustment. When someone gets adjusted by a chiropractor, it connects the physical with that adjustment to the spiritual, which is innate and universal intelligence. And that's when the power of chiropractic really works. So that is the intro. And this is episode 544. Uli, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, James. As you said, it's been a while to sync up our calendars. You were on our podcast a couple months ago, so I really enjoy the opportunity to connect with your audience now.
Yeah, I think to me, it's the ultimate form of producing is to be able to host someone else that is doing great things and to talk to them about their soul genius, what activates them, what motivates them, what like excites them to do what they do. And we share similar hats when it comes to marketing. I believe I come from a bit more old school boots on the ground style, but you come from like the digital world, which everybody's mesmerized by. I think that if you go walk around anywhere, you will not see less than 7 out of 10 people that are on their device scrolling. If they're not actually doing something where they're driving, and they're still doing it then. But people are like addicted to this thing. And I think that you can talk to us today about marketing and systems and ways to make that turn into customers, that to come into new patients, that to turn into clients. So I'm really excited to take a deep dive into your genius of why you do what you do and how you got there. So let's just take people back a few chapters back and talk to us about how you got into digital marketing.
Yeah, actually, just like you, I have actually a medical background, and this started in Germany. I have went to school for chemistry, got a PhD at the University of Pittsburgh here in the U.S. Worked for 10 years in the pharmaceutical industry, working specifically on Alzheimer's research. So I'm very much familiar with pharmacology and the pharma way of doing things. That there's a pill for every ill, and there's certainly spaces in time when that is the best and fastest approach. But when it comes to chronic complex conditions, things like diabetes, things that are brought on by lifestyle, then there's other interventions that are needed. And so about 12 years ago, I sort of saw the writing on the wall. I had to really leave big pharma, and I always call it's like you work for the empire and then you join the rebellion, and yes, much smaller, much harder fight, but ultimately you're going to fight the good fight, and you're on the right side of history, that there's a place for integrative, functional, chiropractic, naturopathic medicine that works in conjunction with maybe the more conventional side of medicine. And so ultimately in that transition, finding functional medicine, I went into marketing. That was one of my passions. So where else do you have a marketing agency owned by a former pharmacologist, PhD chemist that understands probably how the physiology works way better than most practitioners, and is able to translate this into language that consumers can understand?
Well, I think people are starting to wake up, and they're requesting, well, what does my blood look like? They're requesting, what does number 2 look like? They're requesting, what does my spit look like? They're requesting, what does my hair follicle look like? People are waking up. They want to know what their DNA says. They want to know what their ancestors, where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know why they have this thing that they have. They want to know why they have the stuff. And they're like, well, what you guys just did over the past 3 years was a big experiment on me, and I don't know if I trust you guys anymore. So people, once again, they're waking up and they're saying, who can I go find that can help me, that's not going to force this stuff on me and make me feel ostracized if I don't do it? Like, who's going to make me feel welcome? Who's going to like really give me service and provide care to me? And people want to know that. And they're going to go, they're going to go to their Pilates studio and they're going to ask, hey, who do you go to? And they're going to go to their juice bar. Hey, who do you go to? And they're going to show up at their kids' soccer games. They're going to be like, hey, who do you go to? So really it's the referral way of like people seeking out, but now we have to go to their digital device.
Yeah.
And I know that that's where you've keyed in on this, because people are there looking, hey, who am I going to go to?
Exactly. And so the big part there is obviously anytime when you move from brick and mortar and face to face, let's say you have a dinner with a dog or, lunch and learns, and you have a community event where people can interact with you, they can see your passion. It is very easy to confer that trust onto the consumer, that they feel, okay, this sounds like the right person I want to work with. Now, when we're moving online, and especially if we're expanding from just a local 10-mile radius around your brick and mortar clinic to, let's say, the entire state, as of obviously after COVID, a lot of practitioners realize, well, I'm licensed in the state of Pennsylvania. I could actually work with anybody in the state of Pennsylvania. How can I create more virtual versions of care delivery beyond just adjustments and manual care? And so that actually then creates the next problem. How do I create trust when you're on one side of the state and you work with somebody on the other side of the state? But before I get there, I actually want to go back to something that you say before. Obviously, when we're working with our audience, it's good when people want to DIY their health if they're curious. But I also would say when people are in a health crisis, that's maybe not the right time to try DIY only, right? So if you have Hashimoto's,
sure,
you're not going to DIY your way out of Hashimoto's. And I think the thing that practitioners have to recognize is that, we want to go after the solution seekers that ask, who do I work with? As you said, who are you seeing, who you're working with, versus how do I solve this problem my own? So my advice is always the people that are information seekers, the tire kickers, how do we get them to actually ask who, not how? Because frankly, when you have a health crisis, you may have to work with the right person to help you with that.
Well, I wrote this down 2 days ago, and it says the one thing that will motivate people the most is a health scare.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to meet somebody and get to know them really fast, find out how needy they are and let them need somebody's services. Like when somebody has a hot disc in their back and they don't feel good and they can't walk, bro, they get really curious about, where do I go to get this fixed? And then they become, that person that they go for the why. Like,
Exactly.
why should I be here going on?
Exactly.
And I think that's the motivator of the early part of our conversation, is moving people to action. And it doesn't just take a health scare, but sometimes people are just looking for quality of life, and they're looking for a solution and somebody that they can actually trust and bond with.
Yeah, it's interesting. A few years back, Tom Blue, the chief chief strategy officer of the Institute for Functional Medicine, did a private study, and he ranked the top 15 conditions based on the propensity of a consumer or patient initiating care. At the bottom of the list, number 14 to 15, diabetes and high blood pressure. Why? There's a lot of conventional drugs out there. There's a lot of pharma advertising out there, and people perceive this is the option that you go for in that arena. Now, what's at the top of the list? Things like long haul COVID. I know 2 years ago I was fine. Now I'm not fine. These folks are motivated to seek care. Lupus, BHRT, hormonal imbalances, IBS, things that have, just like in chiropractic, you have a hot disc, you have back issues, that will definitely motivate you to take action now and not later.
I've never met anybody more motivated to get better than somebody that had a sore back.
Of course, yeah.
Pain's a hell of a motivator.
Mm-hmm.
But also lifestyle conditions that are managed through pharmacology have a whole lot different belief system that people have. They don't think that they can just get healthier on their own. Like, I can't just start eating right and drinking a gallon of water and working out twice a day and quit the sugar and go to bed at 9:30 p.m. and sleep for 8 hours. Like, they don't think that that's the solution.
Yep.
They've been hook, line, and sinker to think that the only thing that they can do is a pill, a potion, or a lotion.
Yep. And so in our approach, when we work with practitioners, the number one advice I give them is listen, you got to have systems in place that predictably turn prospects into patients. And we call it the P2P system. But ultimately, it's a lot about pre-education and untangling those belief systems that you just mentioned, James. The fact that, people believe there's either a pill, a potion, or a lotion that helps that fix them, and that it's outside of them to change that. So we need to undo this and saying, listen, for a lot of lifestyle-induced diseases, it's not that simple. You look at Alzheimer's. This was one of the reasons when I researched it. There was this dude called Dale Bredesen in 2004 that says, hey, we can do lifestyle changes to help with Alzheimer's. And my peers in the pharmaceutical industry said, we're going to be smarter. We're going to create a pill. And then it turns out a couple $100 million later and another 12 years, everyone threw in the towel because Alzheimer's disease is very complex. And, you can't just have one pill to fix, 20, 30 different problems. So I think it's this pre-education part that's so critical.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to go on a different little path here. It's like saying that a kid's bad because their behavior. And it's not true. The kid's not acting right because he doesn't know how to solve the issue that's going on inside of them. And it's the same thing for the industry. They're not bad. They're just throwing a bunch of money at a problem that they could do more easily with diet and exercise and conventional wisdom. And I think that it is really good when there's some life-saving interventions. But if I come up ill The last place I'm going is a big box medicine facility. The last place I'm going is any of those places. That's where people go to die, man. And I'm going to the person that will like do my labs, that will talk to me, that will do motion palpation on me, that will have the whole array of all the homeopathic things under the sun, and least invasive first. Like,
Yep.
and I'll throw all my money to those people because they're vested in my interest of actually recovering. And the other side of it is they're invested in interest of long-term consumers. And I think that that's really where we have like this East Coast, West Coast, like division is that's where we're at with you guys are wrong. No, you're wrong. And, you know, I think there's room for everybody, but we have to be reasonable about the outcome that we're looking for.
Yeah. And so obviously a big part on the side of the consumers, obviously for certain things like back pain, there's an obvious, if you have back pain, you go to a chiropractor. If you have, dental pain, you go to a dentist. You know, it's like very procedure driven. Now, when we're looking a little bit more outside this in integrative and functional medicine, it's maybe less clear that, you know, you have a set of symptoms. How do you figure out who do you go to? And so this is the gap where consumers don't know enough about, that ecosystem, integrative, functional, naturopathic medicine to know who to turn to. And this is why I feel when it comes to marketing your practice and you want to branch out, let's say as a chiropractor, that if you want to go more into the lifestyle arena, you have programs and that to help people with nutrition, your messaging and your marketing out there, the first place where I tell people to start is with paid ads, because paid ads allow you to reach exactly the people. You don't have to deal with a social media hamster wheel and keep posting, hoping that the right people see it. And in today's world, that means reels, create a 30 to 60 second reel, put it on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, put some money behind it, and become the go-to expert in your local area.
Yeah, I as you know from our past interview, I love local. And I think that the closer you can get to the pulse of your community, the better. But like I said in our opener, everybody is addicted to tech. You know, I think it's really strange when you don't see somebody at the phone these days.
Yeah.
So the algorithms, the I guess distance fencing that you'll put around a campaign, and you can basically call in your ideal client by almost name based on your system.
Yep. And I think a lot of practitioners that have never run ads, their first objection is typically it's like, well, I've never run ads. This sounds like an easy way to lose your shirt. And I would agree, if you don't have the systems in place to track end to end, where does my ad money go and how did it actually turn into paying clients? Then you should probably not start with ads. You have to have that system in place. And that's really 3 things or 4 things. Number one, how do people opt in? How do you collect their information? And typically in today's world, we're collecting not only first name, last name, and email, but we're collecting their cell phone numbers, because studies have shown people love to receive important information via text. So you have to be careful how much you do with this, but just like somebody wants to reconfirm an appointment or just text somebody some questions versus getting on the phone, texting has a 98% open rate. And what I love still, yeah. And what I love even more importantly, people will look at the text message within the next 10 to 15 minutes, as compared to email, where we have an average of 15 to 20% open rate, and people will look at it in 3 to 4 days. And so there's an immediate 5x differential in exposure, but also the recency that the people that text, they see this stuff in 10 minutes, they make the next move, and we're in business, we're talking, versus email. Nobody starts conversation with email. And so I think the system is so important to have text message marketing in place.
You made it to Chiro Hustle. Sit back and learn from the greatest influencers in the profession on the world's #1 chiropractic podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Transact Card, Align Life, Brain-Based Health Solutions, Chiro HD, Imaging Services, Chiro Health USA, Chiro Moguls, Pure Chiro Notes, Titronics, German College of Chiropractic, New Patients in a Box, Life Chiropractic College West, Pro Hockey Chiros, Pro Baseball Chiros, the IFCO, and 100% Chiropractic. Let's hustle. Well, it's like, for instance, if a practitioner wanted to go and build business relationships, they typically don't do that through Facebook. They build business relationships through LinkedIn. So you have to go and shop at the right stores for what you're looking for too. Like, I think that's being clear. And I know that's one of the things that really had me excited about talking to you is like clarity. Like when somebody comes to you, let's just say they've tried 3 to 4 agencies. They spent $10,000 at each of them. And they're like, I don't trust marketing. I've tried it before. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. And they want to like make you the same as every other person out there. How do you object that?
Yep. It's unfortunately too common. And in working with over 1,000 practitioners over the last 10 years, what I've come to realize is people want to be led. They want the one-on-one strategic guidance, and they want implementation. And so oftentimes what you see is you hire an agency just for the first step. Run my Facebook ads or Google ads and get me leads. Now, you don't want leads. You want booked calls, right? You would new first appointments, maybe for your patient special. So ultimately, you need an agency that is doing both the ad side as well as the whole funnel optimization. How do people opt in? Is that the best lead magnet? What's the messaging? Are people actually scheduling? What's the system for calling people back, following up with people that don't schedule on their own? And, ultimately report on the ROI side. Here's how much you spent on Facebook for quiz, Facebook for lead magnets, Google for this. And ultimately, what is the time that it took from an opt-in to go to a discovery call or first appointment, and then became a patient? And ultimately, what was the lifetime value over that first 6 or 12 months that patient generated? Now, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be tracked, and it's virtually impossible if you have multiple systems duct taped together. So people use ClickFunnels, ActiveCampaign, Calendly, God knows what. And, on average, people have 6 to 7 softwares paying $100 each. And I said, listen, you got to simplify this. One system, HIPAA compliant, less than $200 a month, has all the capabilities you need, makes your front desk, work a lot easier. And, let's say if you had 15 minutes a day to follow up with people, I can't be spending 15 minutes trying to figure out who to call. I have to spend that time on actually calling people. So the software has to be a patient pipeline that tells you, here's the people that booked but didn't show. Here's the people that canceled and didn't rebook. Here's the people that were on a report of finding but didn't initiate care, and I need to call them back. It's that kind of technology and visibility that's really missing, that makes these folks saying, well, my previous agency didn't do a good job. Just to give you an example, we worked with somebody, diabetic neuropathy, and they were spending $25,000 a month on Google and Facebook ads. And we came in and we looked at the keywords. It's like, listen, these keywords are not solution seeking buyers. These are generic terms. You're blowing your ad money on this. Why are you doing this? And then your opt-ins are shitty and you're not tracking things. And so this is not going to work. And so we essentially cut the ad budget by half, still get the same amount of leads. We're now tracking everything, and they can see this lead magnet is driving more patients. This lead magnet is generating the cheapest leads. But sometimes the cheapest leads is not what you want. You want essentially the cheapest discovery call and the cheapest cost per acquisition for a patient.
You nailed it. When I was a kid, I grew up playing Nintendo. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would be like, yeah, I played Nintendo, like Mike Tyson's Punch Out, or like, what is it, Contra, or Zelda, like those old games. But there was one game in particular that I really liked because I could run the same play over and over. And that was Tecmo Bowl. I could hand the ball off to the fastest running back, whether it's Bo Jackson, or Thurman Thomas or
Mm-hmm.
Eric Dickerson or OJ Simpson, even, I would hand the ball off and I would run the same play and I would score every time. Like I could score 120 points on a football game.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured out those codes that I could just like put one play, we're gone. One play, we're done. One play, we're done. And every once in a while, I'd throw off the algorithm and I'd throw a pass, or I'd run the ball myself and I wouldn't hand it off. But you could really, like, if you do one play the right way every time, you can expect a certain outcome. And
Yeah.
do you think that that's a similar resonance with doing this
Yeah.
type of marketing for like functional medicine and chiropractors?
I think I certainly think so. One of the things is when I say, without a social media hamster wheel, people think I need to be blogging, I need to do reels, I need to be on TikTok, I need to do a podcast, I need to do the summit, I need to do the local health fair, I need to do dinners with a dog, I need to do this. And there's so much stuff and it's so freaking overwhelming. And I said, all of these things can work, but what's the simplest way that generates reliable results? If you have to only do 4 things and you can automate most of those 4 things, wouldn't you want to do this and have the peace of mind and the knowledge that there's predictability and scalability? Why don't you start there and park the podcast and all these other activities for later, and make sure you have at least that system in place?
Yeah, I think creating expert marketers is probably one of the hardest things to do within like a private practice. Like there's very, very, very few people I've ever met that manage all their stuff in house and actually do a good job and didn't hire like the top of the line consultant to like implement the strategy and build
Mm-hmm.
the framework and system for them to just plug and have their inner office staff manage it all. Like I've seen that. And I've seen people doing really well with that. I've seen people that's like, hey, I hired this person or this team to implement this thing, and we do all of it now. If I ever need to like connect with them, I hit the red button and they help me occasionally. So I've seen that type of system too. But let's talk a little bit more outside the box of like our zone of genius, which is digital format. Let's talk a little bit about how people can grow an office organically too, without relying on social media solely.
Yeah, I think, ultimately, once you have that initial funnel in place, that turns prospect into patient. So lead magnet, educational nurture sequence, maybe a signature talk on autopilot, the discovery call, booking link, or whatever the first appointment is. Then obviously my goal would be, leverage certain tactics on it. So again, ads are high on my list. I would probably tap into reels, again, all social media, and then really think about what can I do with patient reactivation, because ultimately it's a lot easier to reactivate an existing patient that already has given you money, or use that existing patient base to evangelize to their friends. And so really focusing on that reactivation aspect that could maybe use elements of social media, but it is inherently leveraging the network that you have already built. And I include other allied health practitioners in that as well. So referral marketing, partnering up with other professionals falls into that same category. But the fundamental thing to recognize is the most expensive thing in marketing is acquiring a new lead. And so if you already have a bunch of patients in their database, you don't have to give Mark Zuckerberg more money. You can just run an email or SMS campaign to that old list and get more of these people come into the back office, or reach out to those people to get their friends into the office. And again, that costs you 0 advertising dollars. And yet, again, you tap into a warm audience.
I'm curious because I think a lot of people are going to listen to this all the way through. And I'm just really curious. How frequently should you reactivate an old list?
So I think it should be an evergreen system, that you're not just like try to reactivate leads that are 3 years old. So I would say, every 3 to 6 months, put something out there. Oftentimes there should be thoughts in there. What is the offer or that would get people actually from, sitting on the list and not doing anything to getting back into the office. You probably know something about your past clients already. You know what they purchased before. So you can probably guesstimate and segment your list saying, that group is not going to resonate with this one. So how can I make this as sexy as I can to bring people into it?
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. And I think that if people had an ongoing nurturing campaign for reactivation, they would be a lot better average of growth. I think
Yeah.
a lot of times people treat a reactivation campaign like a Super Bowl. Like, oh gosh, we're gonna like do this thing and we're gonna rekindle all these relationships and we're gonna hit our list 3 times in 1 week and we're gonna get all this growth. And then I think that it's an effective strategy, but then there's no long term saying, hey, we're actually going to commit to this and we're going to do this every 90 days. And we're going to commit to this and we're going to do this every 90 days after that into perpetuity.
Yeah.
And maybe people got busy and they lost track and they feel a little guilt or shame for losing track and falling off care. Well, I think if you nurture that campaign as a reactivation campaign, you're going to build that bond greater through your consistency rather than pushing people away and making them feel unwelcome by not connecting with them ever. And I think the SMS is a good way for that. And people are like, darn, I missed 3 visits. They messaged me back. I ghosted them, but really I know I need to go back there.
Yeah.
So
and the way we orchestrate it is obviously once you're opting in, you are on a 10-day nurture sequence to get you into that first appointment. And then we move people, if they don't respond, into a 30 email, over 120-day system. So I have the first 4 months covered in autopilot. And after the end of the 4 month, I move them back to the beginning of the email sequence. So they get emails forever for me, 30 different emails around that topic. Now then, we have some clients, let's say in the aesthetic space, they're running a monthly, beauty special. So they get a text message, hey, Botox, this much off, come into the office. So they do it every 30 days, that they have 1 text message a month and people know this is really what I want. I may not need Botox this month, but maybe next month, etc. And they obviously vary it, Juvederm, microneedling, what have you, anything else that your practice is selling, and rotate through the offers. And again, if you don't abuse this and you send them, hey, here's the monthly special, you're not really pushing hard and making people feel bad. It's like, hey, if you want this, summer is around the corner. If you need this, we're here. And, you generate a consistent stream, and obviously only do SMS marketing for people that have really opted in. So typically we love people to first, when we have a list that we reactivate, we first try to get them to opt in for a lead magnet to recollect that consent for email, text message, and voicemail marketing, so that we're protected. But then once we have that consent locked, then, every 30 days, people could get an offer email to come back into the office. And, again, this is where you leverage SMS with 98% open rate, instant visibility. People just hit to have a few buttons. You don't have to write lengthy email. It is really very, very efficient. It's the best thing. I love.
So I got 2 questions and then I think we should wrap things up. But first things I'll tell everybody is hit your old files consistently. Like every chiropractor, you're going to go look into either your digital or your film room, and you can go through like every file that you've ever taken an x-ray on, and it'll probably like make your eyes bleed. You'll be like, oh gosh, look at all these old files. Or you can go to like, your digital folders of every x-ray you've ever taken. You'll be like, oh gosh. And then you think about your patient volume that you've seen that week, and you put them next to each other, then it's like 12,000 patient files or 150 or 200 patient visits. So like you're saying, the money is in the old files, but you have to go about it the right way and reconnect those relationships the right way in order to take people through the next phase of recommitting to you. Yeah. So best ways for people to understand marketing quickly. How would you say the best way for people to connect with you and to start learning from your systems, the way you do your tracking, and the way that you teach people to the flow of your process.
Yeah, we have lots of great resources on our website at bigboost.marketing. And I'm sure, James, you put this in the show notes. So we have lots of lead magnets there to teach you. We have master classes. So it's your one-stop starting point for everything. We talk about how to build the perfect patient magnet. We talk about selling transformational care. So we talk really about the business model. And again, as we said in the beginning, what makes us unique as an agency that we do one-on-one consulting to really get to the bottom of what makes your practice work, what is broken, what do we need to fix, and then implementation, not just on the Facebook ad site, Google ads, but also with the system, with the copywriting, with the video production, etc. So that it is really turnkey for you. We do 90% of the work, you do the 10% of the work that we can't.
So what's the link again?
Bigboost.marketing.
I got one more question for you.
Shoot, go for it.
So you're doing a good job. Campaign's going well. Office gets a lead, 2 leads, 3 leads that are just real stinkers. And they're complainers. They make a bad review. They do something to just go against the grain of the momentum with the campaign. And they start clunking things up a little bit. How do you troubleshoot that?
Yeah, first of all, it's identifying it as soon as possible, so you can't find out from third parties. So your system need to flag these people and unearth it. So if you get, for instance, a bad review, the system needs to notify you, hey, here's the review, here's how you dispute it, here's how you responded. Again, even if you get a good review, you should know this right away too, because it's shown that practice owner that respond and thank people for their reviews encourage that behavior, making other people that are supposed to leave a review more comfortable doing it. So we then take what's known, just like in functional medicine, where is the broken link? What's not working? What can we know from the analytics? Where did they come from? Did they come from Facebook, from Google? What was the source? What did they experience? Obviously, we're big fans of segmenting. So whenever people opt in for a lead magnet, we have a survey right after. It's like, hey, what's your biggest obstacle? How long have you had this? So I can already tell and pre-screen what is this person looking for, helping me reaching out and personalize my marketing. And so again, there's some things that to review, but ultimately it's like backtracking. Here's the 3 people that clunked up the system. Let me see what's common about them. What can I learn about their past history? And again, this is why it's so important to have an all-in-one system where you can see where did they come in from, when did they come in from, what have they bought, whether have they watched, what emails have they said. So everything is in one place all the way to booking that initial appointment so you can track end to end where things went off the rails.
Yeah, I think it's really important. Sometimes we have to ask the tough questions. Uli, thanks for being on with us. Episode 544, Big Boost Marketing. Go check them out. If you guys are looking for somebody that's an expert in the functional medicine marketing arena, I call it Blueprint Medicine. Check them out. Let them earn your business the old-fashioned way by the one-on-one services he provides. Thanks for being our guest.
Thanks for having me, James, and a lot of had a great time. And thanks for all the work that you do. Really admire what you do with Chiro Hustle. Again, you've come up on your 6-year anniversary, so thanks for being so consistent.
Yeah, that's the major player in the whole thing is we have to go into our zone of genius and we have to follow something that works for us. And if we get lucky enough, we find something that we enjoy doing along the way. And that's really what we've done over here at Hustle. So I'm going to close out, tell everybody you're just one story away. Keep hustling. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Uli, have a great night. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Chiro Hustle. Don't forget to subscribe and check back next week to continue hustling.